Sergei Kiselev was driving home late in the evening through the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. It had been a tough day. In the morning, he had been at the construction site, checking the installation of electrical cables and reviewing invoices, then preparing a report and filling out paperwork in the office. His head was buzzing. His arms were aching from fatigue. And his only desire was to fall on the sofa and get at least a couple of hours of peaceful sleep. He stopped at a 24-hour Walmart near his neighborhood to buy bread and milk. Once in his Ford pickup, he allowed himself to sit in silence for a minute, to gather strength before the last 2 miles of the journey. At that moment, his iPhone came to life, and he immediately became wary. Grandma appeared on the screen. "Hello," Sergei answered quickly, already tensing up inside. "Sergei. Honey." The trembling voice of Galina, his grandmother, sounded through the speaker. "Don't come home. Go somewhere else. Please. Just don't go into the house." "What happened?" Sergei perked up, sat up straight in his seat. "Grandma. Talk to me. Just trust me." Her voice broke into a whisper. "Go to someone right now. I beg you." And the connection was broken. Sergei sat motionless for a few seconds, as if he had been hit on the head. He was too familiar with his grandmother's calm character to write it off as elderly fears. She never called at night without a reason, and especially never begged. The thought came to him by itself. Arthur. Sergei exhaled heavily, started the engine, and sharply turned the steering wheel in the direction opposite his house. He dialed his friend's number on his iPhone. "Dan. Are you home? "What happened?" Dennis answered sleepily. "I need to spend the night at your place. Very urgently." "Of course. Come over. You're scaring me." "Sergei. What's going on there? I'll tell you later." 20 minutes later, Sergei was sitting in the kitchen of his friend's apartment complex. The cup of coffee burned his palms, but did not warm his soul. He was silent, staring at the table. His grandmother's words were spinning in his head. "Don't come home." Denis tried to talk, but Sergei waved him off. Anxiety lived in his heart, but he tried not to show it. And suddenly, the night silence was cut by the howl of sirens. First one, then 2 more. Flickering red and blue lights burst through the window. Sergei jumped up, rushed to the window and froze. In the direction where his house was, the sky was turning an eerie red-orange. "Oh my God," he cried. He ran out into the street without even putting on his shoes and raced along the icy sidewalks. His breathing was labored. His feet were slipping. But he ran. At the intersection, the smell of smoke caught up with him. Harsh, acrid, with the bitter taste of gasoline. As he turned onto his street, his heart sank. His house was ablaze. The fire raged as if it wanted to burn away not only the walls, but the very memory of them. The window glass had already burst. The roof was collapsing, and clouds of black smoke were pouring out from inside. "No, no," he whispered, frozen, as if paralyzed. The firefighters from the Denver Fire Department were bustling around, stretching out hoses, spraying water. But the flames were roaring louder and louder. Flashes were reflected in the faces of the neighbors who had gathered in the yard. One of them noticed Sergei. "Thank God you weren't inside," exclaimed his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Valentina Rodriguez. Grabbing his hand, "I saw smoke and immediately called 911. But the fire spread instantly." Sergei couldn't answer. His gaze was riveted to the house, every detail disappearing in the flames. There was his life, a photo with his grandfather, books on electrical engineering that he had studied for his certification exams, a workbench made with his own hands, gifts from friends. Everything was turning into black ash. He barely heard the firefighters shouting behind him, "Stay back, don't come closer." But the worst thing was not the flames. The worst thing was a clear thought that pierced his heart. Brother Arthur did this. He remembered this evening. How his brother came, demanded money. How he threatened, "You will regret this." And now, the smell of gasoline, fire, and grandmother's words merged into one picture. If not for her call, he would have died in his own house. Sergei stood in the middle of the street, feeling how the cold of the Colorado night and the heat of the fire simultaneously burned him. Everything inside him screamed in pain. But at the same time, another feeling arose: rage. His brother had destroyed everything he had built over the years. And now he had to decide whether to accept it, as his father had always wanted, or fight back for the first time in his life. The next morning, Sergei sat on a bench near the charred ruins. The fire had been put out, but all that remained of the house were blackened walls and smoking beams. The cold wind carried the acrid scent across the street, and every breath he took was pain in his chest. He hadn't slept all night. I just watched the last of the debris burn out. The investigators from the Denver Fire Department walked around the yard, taking pictures, collecting samples. One of them, a middle-aged man with a thick mustache, introduced himself. "Detective Roman Rodriguez, Arson Investigation Unit. We'll need to interview you. Ashters on 9. I'm ready." Sergei exhaled. They were standing next to the charred porch. "Tell me, did you have any electrical appliances turned on? The heater? The stove? Maybe you left something plugged in?" the investigator asked. "No." Sergei shook his head. "I always check everything. I'm an electrical engineer. It's a habit of mine." Detective Rodriguez nodded and sniffed the air. "The smell of gasoline is strong. It looks very much like arson. We'll take samples to the lab." These words only confirmed what Sergei already knew. He drove to his parents' house. The suburban home in Lakewood looked familiarly cozy. A neat little garden, old grapevines on the porch. Sergei froze for a second in front of the door. Gathering his strength, his mother, Maria, opened the door. Her face was tired, but when she saw her son, she threw up her hands. "Sergei, I already know everything. It's terrible." She hugged him, but quickly pulled away, as if afraid of something. "Just don't start. You know Arthur has been going through a difficult time. He couldn't have done this." "Mom!" Sergei's voice trembled. "Do you even understand that I'm alive by a miracle? If it weren't for Grandma, I would have burned alive." Maria lowered her eyes. "He is younger than you. You have always been stronger." Father Alexander came out of the living room, tall, with thick gray eyebrows. He looked at his eldest son sternly, as if he were a subordinate. "What is all this shouting about?" he asked. "Dad." Sergei stepped forward. "Arthur demanded money from me yesterday. I refused. He threatened me, and at night my house burned down. The neighbors smelled gasoline. The investigator said it was arson." The father's gaze darkened, but not from understanding, but from irritation. "Is there evidence?" he asked sharply. "Not yet. But you understand." "I don't have to understand anything." Alexander snapped. "You're the older brother. All your life, you should have been an example. But instead, you accuse your brother without facts." Sergei felt the ground slipping from under his feet. "Dad, are you serious? He burned down my house." "Enough." His father's voice was cold. "Don't air your family business in public. Arthur is going through a difficult time right now. He needs support. And you're blowing this tragedy out of proportion. The insurance will cover the damage. You'll rebuild. Family is more important." Sergei wanted to scream, but inside there was only devastation. His mother was crying, wiping her eyes with her apron. "Sergei, don't ruin your brother." She sobbed. "You're smart. You understand." "Right." And then footsteps were heard. Arthur, disheveled in sweatpants, came in, yawning lazily. At the sight of Sergei, His lips twisted into a grin. The eldest son has arrived. He drawled, "Well, is your house in ruins? It's a shame." "Of course." Sergei stepped towards him. "You were there. You bought gasoline. Grandma heard you. Admit it." Arthur squinted, and something malicious flashed in his eyes. "Show me the proof. In the meantime, don't slander your brother." Maria immediately shielded her youngest son with her body, hugging him to her chest as if he were little. "Don't you dare yell at him." Her voice was shaking. "His life has been hard enough." Alexander stepped closer, and his heavy hand fell on Sergei's shoulder. "Calm down and forget about this conversation." Sergei looked at his parents and understood that they had sided with Arthur again. As always, as in childhood, when they bought him new Nike sneakers while Sergei wore out his old boots. When he was forced to work part-time after school while Arthur hung out with his friends. As always, a lump formed in his throat. He turned away, not wanting to listen any longer, and went out. Slamming the door, his grandmother met him on the porch. She was sitting in a chair, covered with a blanket, and looked at him with attentive eyes. "I heard everything," she whispered. "You're right, Sergei, but they will never admit it. For them, he is the youngest child who must be protected." Sergei sat down next to her and took her hand. "Grandma, what should I do? I can't stand this anymore." "Fight," she said firmly. "You've been silent all your life. Now it's time to speak." Sergei nodded. Determination flared up in his heart. He realized that if his parents didn't want to see the truth, he would find the evidence himself. The next day, Sergei woke up in his friend Dennis's apartment. The night was sleepless. Fire kept flashing before his eyes. Beams were collapsing. And Arthur's threat was ringing in his ears. "You will regret it." Dennis put a mug of strong coffee on the table. "You can't just sit there. You have to do something." "What will I do?" Sergei smiled bitterly. "My parents took his side. For them, I was guilty again. It will always be like this if you keep quiet. You need a lawyer." This thought stuck in his head. Sergei understood that without official steps, Arthur would again remain unpunished. In the evening, he found the number of a lawyer who had once been recommended to him by a colleague. A couple of days later, he was already sitting in a professional office opposite a middle-aged woman with glasses and her hair pulled back into a bun. Anna Williams, attorney at law. She introduced herself, holding out her hand. "Tell me everything in order." Sergei spoke at length about the demands for money, the threats, his grandmother's call, the smell of gasoline, what the neighbors heard. Anna wrote it down, sometimes clarifying details. When he finished, she closed her notebook and looked him straight in the eye. "Sergei, everything you describe looks very much like arson. But the police don't just need words. They need evidence. I can prepare a criminal complaint, but it would be better if you had materials that would confirm your brother's involvement." Sergei felt anger flush his cheeks. "That means I'll have to collect it myself. Not quite yourself." The lawyer smiled slightly. "I have the contacts of a private investigator, an experienced man, a former detective. He knows how and where to look." That's how Sergei met Viktor Paramonov, a Russian-American private investigator, a tall, thin man of about 50 in a worn leather jacket with a penetrating gaze. They met in a small coffee shop in downtown Denver. "So you think your brother set your house on fire?" Viktor asked, sitting down opposite. "I don't think so. I'm sure," Sergei answered firmly. "A relative as a witness. That's good. But it's weak in court." The detective calmly noted, "We need security cameras, receipts, people from the outside." He opened his notebook and started writing. "Look, first, I'll check the gas stations within a 3-mile radius of your house. Perhaps there are records of who bought gasoline in containers. Second, I'll talk to the neighbors about what they saw that night. Third, I'll check to see if your brother was caught on traffic cameras. And if he denies everything, asked Sergei, let him deny it. Our job is to catch him in a lie. With these words, Victor shook his hand and left. Left alone, Sergei felt lighter. For the first time in these days, he had a plan. A few days later, Victor called. There are results. Let's meet. They met again in the same coffee shop. The detective laid out the printouts on the table. The security camera at the Shell station recorded your brother and his two friends. In the evening, a couple of hours before the fire, they were buying gasoline in red containers. Here are the screenshots. Victor moved the photo where Arthur, frowning, is holding a red gas container. Sergei felt like he had been electrocuted. It was him. Damn it. It was him. Calm down. Victor stopped him. Emotions are the enemy. Next, neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez confirmed that she saw Arthur's Camaro near your yard around the time the fire started. She is ready to testify. So we have camera footage and a witness. This is not enough for the court yet, the detective noted, but it is enough to put pressure. In the evening, Sergei was sitting at his grandmother's apartment. Galina held his hand and looked into his eyes. I knew he would do something terrible, she said quietly. But your parents, they will still protect him. Let them protect him. Sergei answered. This time, I will not back down. I have evidence. Grandma nodded. Her eyes filled with tears. You are strong. Sergei, just be careful. Arthur has already crossed the line. Sergei understood that one police report was not enough. If the parents continued to cover for Arthur, everything could end up hushed up, as always. So he decided to act publicly. The idea came unexpectedly. In a week it was going to be Father Alexander's birthday. The whole family would gather at one table. That's where he would present everything in front of witnesses, in front of his mother, in front of his grandmother, so that they could no longer close their eyes. He collected a folder photos from the gas station, testimony from a neighbor, printouts from traffic cameras. Each page was like a nail in the coffin of their usual family myth about poor Arthur. Sergei was growing determined. For the first time in many years, he felt that he was not a boy being scolded, but a man ready to fight for himself. On the eve of his birthday, he met Dennis again. His friend listened and shook his head. Sergei, do you understand that this could destroy the family? The family is already destroyed, he answered flatly. They're just pretending that it isn't. Dennis put his hand on his shoulder. Then act. But hold on. Sergei nodded. A fire was burning in his chest. But not a destructive one, but one that gives strength to move forward. Alexander's birthday came on a cold November evening. The parents' house in Lakewood was shining with lights. Christmas lights hung on the porch. Silhouettes of guests flickered in the windows. Inside, it smelled of grilled steaks, salads, and fresh bread. Sergei stood at the gate with a leather folder under his arm. His heart was beating as if it was trying to break out. He knew that today, everything would change. Either he would get the truth, or he would lose his family forever. But there was no retreat. The relatives were already sitting at the large table in the dining room. Maria was fussing with the dishes. Grandmother Galina was sitting in a chair in the corner, carefully watching what was happening. Arthur, in jeans and a stretched sweater, was lounging on a chair, lazily scrolling through his iPhone. The hero has come, he smirked. Seeing his brother. How long do you think you'll keep that serious face? Sergei didn't answer. He walked to the table, greeted everyone, but there was no warmth in his voice. He put the folder next to the plate and sat down. The atmosphere was tense. Alexander, who was sitting at the head of the table, raised his glass of wine. Thank you all for coming. I'm glad to see my family nearby. The guests supported the toast, but many of them had a look of anticipation in their eyes. Everyone knew about the fire, but no one dared to start a conversation. After the first toasts, Sergei stood up. His voice sounded firm and clear. "I want to say something. It concerns my house and whoever set it on fire." The noise at the table died down. Maria turned pale. The fork fell from her hands. Arthur tensed up, but tried to hide it with a grin. Sergei took the printouts out of the folder and put them on the table. "Here is the recording from the security camera at the Shell station. The evening before the fire, Arthur and his friends buy gasoline in containers. Here is a photo of him holding a gas can." He moved the papers closer to his parents. "And this is the testimony of Mrs. Procken Rodriguez, our neighbor. She saw his Camaro near my yard half an hour before the fire broke out." Maria covered her mouth with her hand. Alexander frowned and slammed his palm on the table. "Sergei, today is my birthday, and you are holding a trial here. What are you doing?" "I am looking for the truth." "Dad." Sergei's voice trembled, but he did not retreat. "My house burned down. Everything I built over the years disappeared, and I know who did it." Everyone turned to Arthur. He leaned back in his chair, grinning demonstratively. "Do you really believe this? The photos are kind of blurry. The old neighbor lady's testimony. You're just looking for someone to blame." "Sergei." Sergei stepped closer, almost hanging over him. "Tell me to my face you didn't set the fire." Silence fell in the room. Arthur looked away, but then suddenly jumped up. "Enough. I'm sick of you and your righteousness. All my life, you have reproached me for being worse than you. You wanted me to feel what it was like to lose everything. So what now? I felt it. How does it feel?" These words sounded like a blow. A general gasp was heard in the room. Maria burst into tears. "Arthur, what did you say?" she whispered. Alexander turned pale. His heavy hand trembled as he tried to rise. "Did you really do it?" he asked hoarsely. Arthur realized that he had let it slip and rushed to the exit. "I didn't do anything. You are all against me," he shouted, pushing his mother aside and slamming the door. Silence reigned in the house. Only Grandma Galina looked at Sergei with quiet pride. Her eyes were shining with tears, but her lips whispered, "Well done, Sergei." Sergei turned to his parents. "Family above all else." "Right. You protected him at the cost of my home, my life. And now you hurt him yourselves." Maria burst into tears. Burying her face in her hands, Alexander sat motionless, as if his entire value system had collapsed. Sergei gathered the papers back into the folder, put it under his arm, and headed for the door. "If you still have doubts, let the district attorney's office decide. I will not allow you to cover for him any longer." He walked out into the night, feeling the cold air nipping at his skin. But inside, for the first time in a long time, it became easier. The truth had been spoken, and now it could no longer be silenced. After that evening, Sergei's life changed completely. The next morning, he received a call from Viktor Paramonov. "The detective, Sergei. Your case has been officially registered. The Denver Police Department has opened a criminal investigation for arson. Your brother has been summoned for questioning." Sergei listened and almost couldn't believe it. For so many years, Arthur had gotten away with everything. And now everything was different. The investigation moved slowly but surely. Evidence was collected one after another: the recording from the gas station, the neighbor's testimony, the fire department's report on traces of gasoline. Even those words of Arthur that escaped at the birthday dinner became part of the police report. His parents did not call him for several days. Then a short text from his mother arrived. "Sergei, come home. Let's talk. Don't ruin your brother." He did not answer. The feeling was too fresh that night they would rather blame him than admit the guilt of the younger one. The only one who remained close by was his grandmother Galina. She asked him to visit her. Even if the relationship with his parents was broken, Sergei came, brought her groceries, sat next to her, listened to her quiet voice. "You did the right thing," she said, squeezing his hand. "You've been patient all your life. And now you've finally told the truth." These words were more precious to him than anything else. To keep from going crazy, Sergei rented a small apartment in Aurora, Colorado. White walls, an old sofa, a couple of chairs. Everything looked empty and temporary. But it was his space. He worked during the day, and in the evenings he was busy restoring documents, filing insurance claims through State Farm, and consulting with his lawyer. Sometimes Dennis would drop by, bring takeout from Chipotle, and try to lighten the mood with jokes. Sometimes his colleague from work would text, "Hang in there. We're here for you." These small signs of support helped more than his entire so-called family. A few weeks later, he found an envelope with no return address in his mailbox. He recognized the handwriting right away, Arthur's uneven, sloppy letters. "Sergei, I know you're reading this. You're my brother. You can't do this to me. Drop the charges. Don't round me. Mom and Dad are old. They're not doing well. Do you want me to go to prison? Think about your family. We're brothers." Sergei reread the letter several times. Each line was filled with the same thing he'd heard all his life. "You must. You're obligated. Family comes first." But not a single word of regret. Not a single apology. Not a hint that Arthur realized what he had done. He sat at his small kitchen table, holding the letter in his hands. Anger and fatigue fought in his chest. Then he tore the sheet into small pieces and threw it in the trash. "Enough," he said out loud. And in the silence, his own voice sounded like a final judgment. The trial. The trial began 6 months later at the Jefferson County District Court. Sergei sat in the front row next to his lawyer, Anna Williams. Arthur, in the defendant's chair, was pale but still defiant. Sometimes he smirked. Sometimes he cast angry glances at his brother. The prosecutor read out the evidence, the recording from the gas station, the neighbor's testimony, the fire department's report, witness statements. Viktor Paramonov spoke as an expert witness, confirming the chain of events. When Grandma Galina was called to testify, the courtroom became completely quiet. Gray-haired, trembling, but with a firm voice, she said, "I heard Arthur talking on his phone about gasoline. I knew he would cause trouble. That's the only reason I called Sergei. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't be here anymore." Alexander and Maria sat in the back, heads down. They didn't look at either their elder or younger son. Only occasionally did Maria wipe away tears with a tissue, and Alexander's hands shook slightly. The verdict was announced at the end of the day. Arthur Kiselev was found guilty of first-degree arson. The court sentenced him to 5 years in Colorado State Penitentiary. Sergei felt a weight lifted from his heart. It didn't bring his home back. I didn't erase the pain, but finally brought a sense of justice. Arthur turned pale, but said nothing. He only cast a glance at his brother, in which hatred and helplessness were mixed. The parents did not approach Sergei after the trial. They left in silence, holding each other. Grandma said quietly, "So be it. Everyone has their own path now." Sergei nodded. He understood that he would most likely never reconnect with his parents. But he did not regret it. Now he could live for himself without the constant feeling of guilt and obligation to his brother. In the spring, he moved into a new apartment in downtown Denver. Modest, but his own. On the bookshelf stood an old photograph with his grandparents, a symbol of the fact that in this life he had real support and memories that no one could take away. Arthur was serving his sentence. His parents had chosen their side. And Sergei felt for the first time in many years that he had broken out of the vicious circle. He had learned that sometimes family isn't just about blood relations, it's about who stands by you when everything falls apart. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind. You've been patient all your life. And now you've finally told the truth. The truth had cost him his family. But it had given him something more valuable, his self-respect and the freedom to build his life on his own terms. The insurance payout from State Farm allowed him to start over. He was no longer the compliant older brother who always gave in. He was a man who had fought for justice and won not just in court, but in the deeper battle for his own dignity and peace of mind. Story 2. Elena stood by the window of her new home, watching the morning fog slowly rise over the lake. 3 months ago, she could not have imagined that she would live in such a place. The 2-story red brick mansion, surrounded by centuries-old pine trees, seemed like something out of a fairy tale. But Aunt Valentina's inheritance turned out to be real, as were the documents for this house in the Moscow region. The sound of the engine made her turn around. A black car was slowly approaching the house along the winding road. Elena frowned. She was not expecting anyone. Only her sister and a few close friends knew the address. The car stopped in front of the porch, and 2 people got out. People Elena hoped never to see again. Dmitri looked exactly the same as he did 3 years ago. Tall, to fit, with carefully styled dark hair. Tamara Ivanovna stood next to him. His mother in her usual strict suit, with a displeased expression on her face. They looked around. With poorly concealed surprise, Elena slowly walked down the porch. Her heart was pounding, but she forced herself to walk straight. With her head up, Elena. Dmitri, I broke the silence. We heard you bought a house. We're coming to live with you and make peace. She stopped a few steps away from them, crossing her arms over her chest. This is my land. What do you want here? Tamara Ivanovna stepped forward, smiling tensely. Lenochka, darling, we're a family. Demechka told me that you got rich. It's so wonderful. We thought, maybe we should forget old grievances. Because we lived together for so many years. 3 years. Tamara Ivanovna. And it was the worst time in my life. Dmitri tried to feign remorse. Lena, I understand that you're angry. But people change. I realized my mistakes. Maybe we could try to start over. I see you have opportunities now. Elena grinned. How predictable. As soon as she received the inheritance, they immediately showed up with repentant speeches. Opportunities appeared for me only after you disappeared from my life. And I want it to stay that way. But Lenochka Tamara Ivanovna took a step closer. We are not strangers. We have so many memories together. Yes, we do. For example, how you kicked me out of the apartment with the words, "Find yourself another fool." Or how you, Tamara Ivanovna, told all the neighbors that I was a gold digger and a loser. Dmitri shuddered, but quickly pulled himself together. Lena, we all make mistakes. It is important to be able to forgive them. Look at this house. At this plot of land. Why do you need all this alone? We could create a real family hearth here. For what reason? 3 years ago you made it clear that you didn't need me. Dmitri, you literally said that you would get involved with someone more promising. What has changed? Tamara Ivanovna looked impatiently at her son, then turned to Elena again. Demachka was a stupid boy, but now he has grown up, understood a lot. And you, my dear, have apparently changed too. You have become more confident, more successful. This is wonderful. We could complement each other. Elena shook her head. You would complement my bank account. Is that what you mean? Don't be so cynical. Dmitri tried to take her hand, but she pulled away. I really missed you. Our closeness. Because we understood each other. We never understood each other. You wanted an obedient wife who would admire you and keep quiet when your mother would tell her how to live. And I wanted a partner and an equal relationship. But now everything can be different. Dmitri exclaimed passionately. You have independence. Financial freedom. You can dictate your terms. Elena laughed at dictating terms. Dmitri, you forgot who you are. You work for your uncle's company for a small salary and still live with your mother in a 2-room apartment. What can you offer me? Except for the same problems that I have already gotten rid of. Tamara Ivanovna's face darkened. You've become very arrogant. Elena, money has gone to your head. But wealth is not everything in life. Family, love, mutual understanding. That's what's really important. I agree. That's why I don't want to let people into my life who see me only as a wallet on legs. Dmitri was starting to lose patience. Fine. Let's say we made a mistake then. But now we're here. We're ready to correct our mistakes. Aren't you going to give us a chance? A chance? Elena raised an eyebrow. And how many chances did you give me? When I asked you not to move in with your mother right after the wedding, you gave me a chance. When I wanted to find a better job, you supported me. When I suggested saving up for our own place, you agreed. There were different circumstances then. Yes. I had no money then. That's the whole difference. Tamara Ivanovna tried to change tactics. Elena, my dear, I understand that I was strict with you, but I just wanted you to become a good wife and housewife. Now I see that you achieved everything yourself. And I'm proud of you. Maybe we could start talking like a grown woman, Tamara Ivanovna. Last time, you called me a barren loser and said that Demotchka would find someone better. That's grown-up behavior. Dmitri blushed. Mom didn't mean that. Your mom meant exactly what she said. And you both know it. There was an awkward pause. Elena saw them exchanging glances, clearly coming up with a new approach. Okay, Dmitri finally said. Maybe we should go inside and talk calmly. Like human beings. It's awkward to discuss personal things outside. Elena hesitated. On the one hand, she wanted to just tell them to get out. On the other, curiosity was getting the better of her. She wanted to see their faces when they saw how she lived now. Good, she said finally. But not for long. They went up to the porch. Elena opened the massive oak door and was the first to enter the hallway. Admiring sighs were heard behind her. What a house. Tamara Ivanovna couldn't help but say, how much did it cost? Enough for me to afford it. Elena answered dryly. They walked into the living room. High ceilings. Antique fourniture. Paintings on the walls. Luxurieux carpet. Everything spoke of good taste and considerable funds. Dmitri whistled Lena. This is some kind of palace. And you live here alone, and who, in your opinion, should live here? Well, a house like this is made for a family. For children who would run around these rooms. Elena felt herself tense up. Children. This topic has always been a sore point. Children. She asked again. But you have always been against children. Neither the time, nor the readiness. First, you need to get on your feet. These are your words. Dmitri, I was young and stupid, he said hastily. Now I understand that children are the meaning of life. We could. Mom. I woke up. A voice came from the stairs above. A boy's ringing childish voice. Dmitri and Tamara Ivanovna froze. Turning to the stairs. A little boy of about 3 or 4 years old was coming down the steps, wearing pajamas with teddy bears on them. He had dark hair and brown eyes. Just like Dmitri. Mom. Who is this? The boy asked. Running up to Yelena and hugging her legs. Yelena bent down and picked him up. Did the familiar Sonny just drop by? She looked at Dmitri and his mother. Frozen in shock. Their faces were white as a sheet. Is this your son? Dmitri whispered barely audibly. Yes. Yelena answered calmly. This is my son. Maxim. But how? When Tamara Ivanovna was the first to come to her senses, Elena, you were pregnant when we divorced? Why didn't you say anything? And why Elena hugged her son tighter. You made it clear that you didn't need children. Why did you have to upset you with the news that there would soon be another extra child, but this is my son? Dmitri took a step forward. My son. You understand. I have rights. What rights? Elena looked at him coldly. The rights of someone who abandoned his pregnant wife. The rights of someone who never once inquired about her life for 3 years. I didn't know. And if you had known, what would you have done? Demanded an abortion. Dmitri opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. Elena saw the answer in his eyes. That's exactly it. She nodded. That's why I didn't tell. Maxim hugged his mother tighter around the neck. Mom. Why is Uncle shouting? He's not shouting. Honey. He was just surprised. Go play in your room. And I'll see the guests out. Can I show them my cars? Another time. Elena said softly, putting her son down on the floor. Run. The boy obediently ran upstairs. Dmitri watched him go with a desperate expression on his face. Elena. He turned to her. We need to talk. Seriously talk, this changes everything. It doesn't change anything. How does it not change anything? I have a son. My mother has a grandson. We are a family. We are not a family. Elena said firmly. A family is when people support each other in difficult times. And you abandoned me when it was hardest for me? Tamara Ivanovna had been silent all this time. But now Elena spoke up. I understand you're angry. But think about the child. The boy needs a father. He needs a family. He has a family. He and I. This is not a family. Dmitri flared up. The child needs a man in the house. He needs a man's upbringing. From you? Elena grinned. From a man who at 30 can't make an independent decision without his mother's approval. I've changed in 3 months. How convenient. Elena Tamara Ivanovna came closer. I understand that we are guilty before you. But let's forget the past. The main thing now is the boy. He is our blood. Our family line continues in him. Your mouth. Elena shook her head. Maxim is my son. I gave birth to him. I raise him. I take care of him every day. And who are you random people who showed up after learning about the money? We are not random. Dmitri was indignant. I am his father. Biologically. Yes. In fact, no. A father is someone who reads bedtime stories, who heals scraped knees, who teaches how to ride a bike. And what did you do? I didn't know he existed. And what would have changed if you had answer honestly? Dmitri was silent. Elena saw how he was struggling with himself, trying to find the right words. I would have taken responsibility. He finally said, responsibility. How did you take responsibility for our marriage? It was different. Nothing was different. As soon as things got difficult, you ran away. How will you run away this time? If Maxim cries at night or gets sick? Tamara Ivanovna decided to change tactics well. Let's say we were wrong then. But now we are ready to correct ourselves. Elena, you have everything: money, a house, independence. But don't you want Maxim to have a full-fledged family? A full-fledged family is not the number of people, but the quality of relationships. But Grandma, Grandpa, Dad, continued Tamara Ivanovna. This is important for the child's development. It is important when these people really love the child. They see it as a way to get access to money. You are unfair. Dmitri flared up. Yes. We found out about your inheritance and came. But we sincerely want to improve relations. Sincerely. Elena raised an eyebrow. What if I had no money? If I still lived in a rented one-room apartment and worked as a secretary? Dmitri hesitated. Well, that's not important anymore. This is the most important thing. Because it shows your true motives. Lena, please. He tried to take her hands, but she retreated. Give us a chance. At least for the boy's sake. For the sake of the boy. I won't let you in here, Elena said firmly. Maxim is growing up in love and safety. He doesn't need people who will appear and disappear at their own will. We won't disappear. Tamara Ivanovna assured. We want to be a part of his life. Until the first difficulties. Until the first quarrel. Until the first moment when you feel uncomfortable. You don't give us a chance to prove otherwise. I already gave you one 3 years ago. And you used it to show your true colors. A heavy silence fell over the room. Dmitri and his mother exchanged glances, clearly thinking up new arguments. Okay, Dmitri finally said. Let's assume you're right about our motives. But the fact remains a fact. Maxim is my son. And by law, I have rights to communicate with him. Elena felt her insides clench with rage. They had moved on to threats. By law, she asked icily. Excellent. Then let's talk about the law. By Russian law, Elena said slowly, a father has the right to communicate with a child only if it does not contradict the interests of the child, and also on condition that he fulfills his parental responsibilities. Exactly. Dmitri was delighted. I am ready to fulfill them. What responsibilities have you fulfilled for the last 3 years? Elena asked. Have you paid alimony? I did not know. Excellent. So, you have been evading child support for 3 years. This is already grounds for limiting parental rights. Tamara Ivanovna frowned. But he didn't know. You hid the information about the pregnancy from him. I wasn't obliged to tell anyone anything. Especially the people who threw me out of the house with the words, go wherever you want. By the way, I have witnesses to this scene. The neighbors recorded your screams on a dictaphone when you were yelling at the whole stairwell. Dmitri turned pale. He clearly hadn't expected Elena to be so prepared for legal issues. Moreover, she continued, under Article 69 of the Family Code, parents can be deprived of parental rights if they evade their parental duties, including malicious evasion of alimony payments. But the court cannot deprive me of rights to a child whose existence I did not know, objected Dmitri. Maybe if I prove that you are not capable of ensuring the well-being of the child. And I have sufficient grounds for this. What grounds? Tamara Ivanovna became wary. Elena smiled a cold smile. Firstly, the unstable financial situation. You work for hire for a minimum wage and do not have your own home. Secondly, alcohol addiction. What alcohol addiction? Dmitri was indignant. And do you remember the New Year's corporate party 3 years ago? When you were brought home by taxi drunk, and you tried to hit me for making a remark. I have photos of your bruises on my arms and statements from neighbors. It was one time, and I was just drunk, not independent. And do you remember your birthday and your mother's birthday? And just Friday nights when you came home, and the first thing you did was go to the refrigerator for beer. Dmitri opened his mouth. But Elena didn't let him answer. Thirdly, psychological instability and a tendency toward aggression. I have recordings of our conversations where you yell at me and threaten me. Did you record our conversations? Tamara Ivanovna gasped in the last months of their life together. Yes. When she realized where this was all heading, very prudent. As it turned out, Dmitri nervously ran his hand through his hair. Lena, this is mean. You were spying on me. I defended myself. And, as you can see, not in vain. Now I have all the evidence that you are not capable of raising a child. But that was 3 years ago. People change. Prove that you have changed. Show proof of income. A certificate from a drug treatment center. A reference from work. Documents for your own home. Dmitri was silent. Everyone understood that he did not have such documents. And now, Elena continued. Let's talk about what I can present to the court. A certificate of income showing that I can provide the child with a decent life, documents for the house and other real estate, medical certificates confirming my excellent health, references from kindergarten teachers who will confirm that Maxim is growing up a healthy and happy child. Tamara Ivanovna tried to take the initiative. But material well-being is not everything. A child needs love, attention, love. Elena laughed at the people who 3 years ago called me barren and said that it was good that she did not have children. Otherwise, they would have divorced, and there would have been even more poverty. These are your words. Tamara Ivanovna. Verbatim. The woman blushed. I was upset about the divorce. You were sincere. That's the difference. And now you're being hypocritical because you saw the benefit. We're not being hypocritical. Dmitri flared up. We really want to be a family. Do you want to be a family? Elena went to the window, from where the lake was visible. Then answer some simple questions. What is the name of Maxim's pediatrician? Dmitri looked at his mother in confusion. What is his blood type? Silence. What is he allergic to? We didn't know. Tamara Ivanovna began. What is his favorite fairy tale? What song does he ask to be sung at night? Is he afraid of the dark? Can he swim, Elena? That's not fair. Dmitri tried to object. We couldn't know that. Exactly. You don't know anything about him. For you, he is just an abstract heir and a way to get access to my money. But for me, he is the center of the universe. The meaning of life? The most precious thing I have? But we can find out. We want to find out. It's too late. The ship has sailed. As they say. The patter of little feet was heard from above. And a minute later, Maxim reappeared in the guest room. This time he was wearing jeans and a red t-shirt, and he was holding a toy car in his hands. Mom, can I show the guests my new car? It can drive itself. Elena sat down next to her son. Sure. Sunshine. Show me. The boy put the car on the floor and pressed the button. The toy drove around the room, flashing its headlights and making engine sounds. Wow, Maxim was delighted. And it also has a siren. He pressed another button, and the machine howled like a real fire engine. Dmitri looked at his son with a hungry expression on his face. Elena saw how he wanted to come up to the boy and talk to him. But he didn't dare. Maxim, he said carefully. And how old are you? The boy raised 3 fingers. 3. And soon he'll be 4. And when is your birthday in December? Mom says, we'll celebrate here. In the new house. And invite all my friends from kindergarten. Tamara Ivanovna couldn't resist. Maximovka. What does mommy call you at home, Maxik? Maximka. Sunshine. The boy happily listed them. And sometimes my good one and my smart one. Do you have a dad? Elena tensed up, but decided not to interfere. Let Maxim answer himself. No. The boy simply said, why do I need one? I have a mother. And that's enough. But all children live with their mother and father. Not all. Objected Maxim. My friend Artyom doesn't have a father either. But he does have a grandfather. And Anya from our group has a father and another father, whom she calls Sasha. And I have a mother. And she is the best. He ran up to Elena and hugged her. Really? Mom, you are the best. And you are the best for me. Elena smiled, kissing her son on the top of his head. Dmitri watched this scene with a painful expression on his face. Elena understood what was going on in his soul. He saw his son, but his son didn't know him and didn't need him. Maxim. Dmitri spoke again. Do you want me to teach you how to play football? The boy looked at him curiously. Do you know how? Of course I can. I even played on a team before. And will Mom decide? Everyone looked at Elena. She saw hope in Dmitri's eyes and complete trust in her son's eyes. Maxik, she said softly. This guy won't stay with us for long. He just stopped by to talk to Mom about business. It's a pity. The boy was upset. Otherwise, we could have played football. We'll play football together this weekend. Elena promised. Or we'll ask Uncle Sergey to teach you. Uncle Sergey, Dmitri asked again. My neighbor? Elena explained. He often helps Maxim and me. A real man. Unlike some. Dmitri gritted his teeth, but said nothing. Mom, can I go to my place and paint? Maxim asked. Of course. Honey, just be careful with the paints. Okay. The boy picked up his car and ran upstairs. Silence reigned once more in the room. He is a wonderful child. Tamara Ivanovna said quietly. Yes. Elena agreed. And he will remain so if there are no unnecessary shocks in his life. Unnecessary shocks, Dmitri was indignant. I am his father. You are a biological donor. Elena answered harshly. A father is someone who is there every day. Who knows what a child likes for breakfast, what cartoons he watches. What he is afraid of I can find out. In what time frame? In a week? In a month? And then what you will disappear again when you get tired of playing dad. I will not disappear. How come he hasn't disappeared from my life? Elena came closer to him. Dmitri, you didn't even try to save our marriage. At the first difficulties you ran away. What makes me think that it will be different with a child? A child is a different matter. A child is a huge responsibility. It is sleepless nights when he is sick. It is hysterics in the store. It is constant expenses on clothes, toys, development. It is the need to plan your life taking into account his needs. Are you ready for this? Dmitri hesitated. I'm ready to try. Try? Elena shook her head. You don't try with children. You either love them and take responsibility, or you don't interfere in their lives. But I have rights. You have responsibilities that you haven't fulfilled. And if you try to demand meetings with Maxim through the court, I will fight with all available means. Do you want to deprive the child of a father? I want to protect the child from people who can hurt him. Tamara Ivanovna. Elena tried again. Think rationally. You now have money. Independence. You can afford to be generous. Give us a chance to be a part of the boy's life. Generous. Elena grinned. Tamara Ivanovna. You have confused generosity with stupidity. Generosity is when you forgive those who repent of their actions. And you repent of abandoning me, or of missing out on an opportunity. We repent. Of what exactly? Of failing to keep the family together? Dmitri said uncertainly. You failed to keep the family together, or did you deliberately destroy it? Well, there were mistakes on both sides. On both sides, Elena raised an eyebrow. Remind me what my mistakes were. You were too demanding. You wanted too much. I wanted my husband to consult me before making decisions. For us to live separately from your mother. For you to help me around the house. It was too much. Mom needed our support. Your mother needed control over our lives. And you let her. Tamara Ivanovna flared up. I just wanted to help you. Young families often make mistakes. You wanted me to become an obedient puppet. Cook borscht according to your recipes. Clean according to your schedule. Dress according to your taste. I wanted to teach you how to be a good wife. You wanted to break my personality and turn me into a copy of yourself. Elena, stop digging in the past. Dmitri said tiredly. Let's talk about the future. About Maxim. We've already talked about Maxim. He has a future with me. But what about his right to know his father? What about his right to grow up in safety and stability? I didn't hurt him. Not intentionally. But what happens when you meet someone again and decide to get married? Will there be time for Maxim? What if you have other children? These are hypothetical situations based on your previous behavior. You have already shown once how you act when relationships become complicated. Dmitri was silent. Elena saw that her arguments were reaching their goal. Maxim is happy now. She continued. He has a stable life. A loving mother. Good conditions. Why not risk his well-being for the sake of your ambitions? This is not ambition. Tamara Ivanovna exclaimed. It is a natural desire of a grandmother to know her grandson. Natural. 3 years ago you said that God willing. Elena never has children. What has changed? I didn't mean that. You meant exactly what you said. And now, when it turns out that I do have a child, and even money for his upkeep. You suddenly want to become a caring grandmother. People have the right to change their minds. They do. But I have the right not to trust people who have already shown their true colors once. Silence fell again. Elena knew the conversation was reaching a dead end. Dmitri and his mother were clearly not going to give in easily. Okay. Dmitri finally said, if you don't trust our words, let's make a legally binding agreement. What agreement? About how we will communicate with Maxim. We will determine the time of meetings, conditions, obligations. Elena shook her head. No agreements. Maxim lives with me, and I am not going to change that. Then we will have to go to court. Tamara Ivanovna said threateningly, go ahead. I am ready. You understand that legal proceedings are stressful for a child. I understand. So, I advise you to think carefully before filing a lawsuit. We have thought about it. And we are ready to fight for our grandson. Ours. Elena laughed. Tamara Ivanovna, you don't even know him. How can he be yours? He is our blood. Blood is not everything. Love. Care. Time spent together? That is what makes people with a family. We can give him love and care. You can. But I am not obliged to give you such an opportunity. Dmitri stood up and started walking around the room. Lena, why are you being stubborn? We are civilized people. We can come to an agreement in a good way. In a good way is when people respect each other's boundaries. And you came here uninvited with demands. We came with an offer, with an ultimatum. We are coming to live with you and make peace. This sounds like an ultimatum. We are ready to compromise. The only compromise that will suit me is if you turn around and leave here, forgetting the way to my house. This is not a compromise. This is capitulation. This is justice. Tamara Ivanovna went to the window, beyond which the lake and the forest were visible. Such a beautiful place. Such a big house. And the child grows up here alone. Without peers. Without male education. Maxim has friends in kindergarten. There are clubs. There are developmental classes. And there is a loving mother who devotes all her time to him. But this is not enough. The boy needs a man in the house. If I need a man in the house, I will find a worthy one. And I will not return to the one who has already shown his unreliability. You mean this one? Sergei Dmitri asked with hostility. I mean any man who is capable of taking responsibility and not running away at the first difficulties. So, you are ready to let a strange man into Maxim's life. But not his biological father. A biological father is someone who is his by fact, not by DNA. The argument was clearly reaching a dead end. Dmitri and Tamara Ivanovna moved on to open threats. And Elena became more and more determined. And then Maxim's voice came from above again. Mom. Mom. Come quickly. Maxim's voice sounded alarmed. Elena forgot about the guests and rushed upstairs. Dmitri and Tamara Ivanovna followed her. In the children's room, Maxim stood by the window with big, frightened eyes. Mom. There are strange people walking around our house. They are looking at something. Elena went to the window and looked out. There really were two figures moving in the yard. A man and a woman in dark clothes. They were walking around the house, writing something in a notebook and taking pictures. Who is that? Dmitri asked. Looking over Elena's shoulder. I have no idea. Maxim, have you seen them before? No. Mom. They just arrived in a white car. Elena frowned. Too many coincidences. First Dmitri with his mother. Now, some strangers. Maybe they are surveyors, Tamara Ivanovna suggested. On my land? Without my permission. Elena went downstairs and headed for the exit. An unpleasant surprise awaited her in the yard. A middle-aged man, in an expensive suit, was photographing the facade of a house. And a woman was writing something down on a tablet. Excuse me. What are you doing here? Elena asked loudly. The man turned around and smiled a professional smile. Good afternoon. My name is Viktor Ivanovich. I represent the Prestige Real Estate Agency. And this is my colleague Anna. We are evaluating your property. By whose order? By order of interested parties. The man answered evasively. What interested parties? Elena felt her insides shrink with anger. This is confidential information. But I can say that we are talking about a possible purchase and sale transaction. The house is not for sale. Not yet. The woman corrected. But situations are different. Dmitry and Tamara Ivanovna came out of the house. Seeing the appraisers, they exchanged strange glances. Do you know them? Asked Elena. Of course not. Dmitry answered hastily. The first time I've seen them. But Elena noticed how Tamara Ivanovna nodded slightly to the male appraiser. The puzzle began to come together. Get off my property, she told the appraisers. Immediately, we have the right to inspect the property as part of a civil case, have easy to. Viktor Ivanovich objected. What civil case? A case about the division of property between spouses, the man said calmly. Elena froze. Dmitry and his mother grinned. We got divorced 3 years ago, she shouted. But property acquired during the marriage is subject to division regardless of the time that has passed since the divorce. The appraiser explained. There is reason to believe that this property was acquired with funds received during the marriage. It is an inheritance. This will have to be established by the court. Elena turned to Dmitry. You filed for division of property. I exercised my legal rights. He answered calmly. You yourself spoke about the law. What rights? I inherited the house after our divorce? But the money to buy it could have been saved during the marriage. Tamara Ivanovna intervened. And if this is so, then Dmitry has half the right. Are you crazy? I have documents confirming the source of funds. Documents can be forged. Viktor Ivanovich shrugged. The examination will show. Elena felt the ground slipping from under her feet. They had planned everything in advance. A visit, talk of reconciliation, and then a blow to the solar plexus. And what do you want to get as a result? She asked. A fair division of property, Dmitry replied, and the establishment of my parental rights in relation to my son, in one package, so to speak, his mother added. Elena understood the whole plan. If the court recognizes the house as jointly acquired property, Dmitry will get half, and at the same time, he will seek the right to communicate with Maxim. As a result, she and her son will either be left without a home or will be forced to live under the same roof with people she hates. Very clever, she said. Just one nuance. I have excellent lawyers. And we have. Dmitry smiled. Very good lawyers who work for a percentage of the case they win. Tamara Ivanovna added. They are very interested in this case. Crying was heard from above. Maxim stood by the window and sobbed, seeing strangers walking around his yard, and his mother arguing with strangers. Mom, he shouted. Mom, come here. Elena looked at her son, then at the greedy face of her ex-husband from her mother-in-law, at the indifferent faces of the appraisers. Something inside her finally broke. Maxim, honey, everything is fine, she shouted. Mom will get up now. She turned to Dmitry. You want war, you'll get war. We don't want war, Tamara Ivanovna said peacefully. We want justice. Justice, Elena laughed. Good. Then let's talk about justice. She took out her phone and started dialing. Hello. Mikhail Sergeyevich. This is Elena Voronova. I have urgent business with you. Yes. Exactly what we talked about last week. Dmitry became wary. Who are you talking to? A private detective. Elena answered calmly. Who has been collecting information about your life after the divorce for the last 3 months. What information? About your income that you hide from the tax authorities. About your participation in dubious schemes at your uncle's work. About your debts that you racked up in the casino. Dimitri's face turned gray. You're bluffing. About your relationship with your mother's married boss, who promised her an apartment in exchange for services. Elena continued. Looking at Tamara Ivanovna, the woman turned pale. This is not true. About the attempted fraud with your grandfather's inheritance, which you undertook last year. About a forged will that didn't pass the examination. How do you know that? Dimitri whispered. And did you think that I would sit idly by after receiving a large inheritance, that I wouldn't take care of my safety? The appraisers exchanged glances and began to quietly back away to the car. Mikhail Sergeyevich. Elena continued the conversation on the phone. Yes. Pass everything on to the prosecutor's office and the tax office too. Let them sort it out. Stop. Dimitri stepped towards her. What are you doing? I'm protecting myself and my son from blackmailers and scammers. We're not scammers. But who are we? Decent people who filed a fake lawsuit for division of property, knowing for sure that the house was bought with inherited money. We didn't know. We knew because Tamara Ivanovna works in the same notary office where Aunt Valentina's inheritance was processed, and she had access to the documents. Tamara Ivanovna opened her mouth, but couldn't say anything. Using official position to obtain confidential information is an article, Elena continued, and trying to appropriate someone else's property through the court is fraud. We can explain everything. Dimitri tried to justify himself. Explain to the investigator. And now get off my land. That's it. The appraisers were already getting into the car. Dimitri and Tamara Ivanovna stood in the middle of the yard, confused. Lena. Wait. Dimitri asked. Let's talk calmly. We've already talked. You've shown your true colors. But Maxim, he's my son. Maxim is my son. And your genetic material that's no longer needed. You have no right to deprive me of my child. I'm not depriving him. You deprived yourself when you decided to blackmail me with lawsuits. Maxim's crying came from above again. Elena couldn't stand it. Are you happy? The child is crying because of your games. We wanted the best. You wanted money, and for that, you were ready to ruin the life of a 3-year-old boy. We are his grandparents. You are strangers who brought lies and threats into our home. Elena headed toward the house. But Dimitri grabbed her hand. Lena, I beg you, give me a chance to be a father. She stopped and looked at him. A chance? Do you want a chance? Yes. Fine. Drop the lawsuit for division of property. Publicly apologize for the blackmail attempt. Find a job and live separately from your mother. Start paying alimony. And in a year we'll talk about possible meetings with Maxim. But this is a condition. Accept or refuse. Dimitri looked at his mother. She shook her head slightly. I can't accept such conditions. He said, then there's nothing to talk about. Elena pulled her hand away and went to the house. Behind her, she heard Tamara Ivanovna whispering to her son, Demachka, don't give up. We have trump cards. What trump cards? Elena snapped back. The child. Tamara Ivanovna said, Maxim has the right to know the truth about his father. And sooner or later he will start asking questions. And I will answer them honestly. I'll tell him that his father abandoned us when I was having a hard time. That he didn't show any interest in our son for 3 years. And then came with demands, after learning about the money. Will you turn him against us? I'll tell him the truth. And he'll draw his own conclusions. It's cruel. It was cruel to abandon a pregnant wife. And I'm just protecting my child. Elena went up to the porch and turned around. You have 10 minutes to leave my territory. Otherwise I will call the police. We will see each other again, shouted Tamara Ivanovna. In court? Agreed Elena. Where will I present all the evidence of your machinations? She went into the house and went up to her son. Maxim was sitting on the bed, wiping away tears. Mom, why did you fight with those people? Elena hugged him. Because they wanted to take our house. Honey, take it, but it's our house. Yes. It's ours. And no one will take it from us. And who is that guy who was yelling? Elena paused, choosing her words. This is the man who was once married to Mom. But we divorced before you were born. And why did he say that I was his son? Because Elena sighed. Maxim, you're a big boy now. It's time for you to know the truth. She sat down next to her son and took his hands. This uncle really is your dad. Biological dad. But he left us when you were still in your mom's tummy. Why? Because he wasn't ready to be a dad. He was afraid of responsibility. And now, are you ready? Now he found out that Mom has money and decided to come back. Maxim frowned. So it means he loves money. Not me. I think yes. Then I don't need him. The boy said decisively. I have you. And that's enough. Elena hugged her son tightly, feeling tears of relief roll from her eyes. Maxim understood everything correctly. A car door slammed downstairs. The sound of a car, driving away, was heard. Through the window, Elena saw Dimitri's black car and the appraiser's white car leaving her territory. Mom, will they come again? Maxim asked. Maybe. But we won't let them in. And if they insist, then we'll move to another place where they won't find us. But I like this house. And I like it. So we will fight for it. Elena knew that ahead of her were trials, proceedings, an unpleasant meeting with lawyers. Dimitri and his mother would not calm down easily, but she was ready to fight. She had money for good lawyers, dirt on her opponents, and, most importantly, she was protecting her child. Mom, can we go to kindergarten tomorrow? Asked Maxim. I want to tell Artyom about our new house. Of course. Honey. And can we invite friends to the birthday party? Definitely. And will Uncle Sergey come if he wants? He's good. Not like that uncle who was yelling. Yes. Uncle Sergey is good. Elena looked out the window at the lake. Where did the sun set? She had won the first round. But the war was just beginning. Dmitri and Tamara Ivanovna would not give up. They would look for new ways to get to her money and Maxim. But now she knew what they were capable of. And she was ready to defend herself by any means necessary. She had a son, a house, money, and the determination not to let anyone ruin their happiness. And most importantly, Maxim is on her side. He understood who is who and made his choice. The choice in favor of his mother, who loves him truly, and not for selfish reasons. Elena kissed her son on the forehead. Everything will be fine. My dear, Mom will not let anyone hurt you. I know. Maxim answered seriously. You are the strongest mother in the world. And at that moment, Elena realized that she was truly strong enough to protect her happiness from anyone who would try to take it away.